Hey everyone, welcome back to The Rustic Wife. I'm Alana and welcome back to my kitchen. So today I am going to be making some candy. We're making homemade sponge toffee. My mom used to make this every Halloween and it's a couple of days to Halloween right now, so I thought I'd make some too. We used to have all the little kids from the village come and line up at our house for my mom's homemade candy, and she would make candy apples, and I'll leave a link to that as well. I did a video on that a couple of years ago and they're really good too. So it's kind of a rainy day and sometimes a damp, humid day isn't the best for making candy, but we'll give it a try. So I'm going to turn you around and we'll get started. So when you are making candy, once it starts to boil, it is like molten lava. So you definitely want to have everything out and ready to go. You don't want to be fumbling for anything while that candy is coming up to temperature. I have my list of ingredients and tools that you will need to make the sponge toffee, otherwise known as, some people call it honeycomb candy, or I think some people call it sea foam. I'm not sure, but we always called it sponge toffee. So first of all, you're going to need a saucepan, a stock pot actually. It's got to be quite a large one because your candy mixture will foam up and you don't want it to overflow from a smaller pot. And you want something that is a really good sturdy pot, something that is really heavy, a heavy bottomed pot. If it's a really cheap, light pot, you'll burn your candy every single time. So make sure it's a heavy duty bottomed pot. And you will also need some sugar. I have 3 cups of granulated sugar. I have 2/3 of a cup of water, 2/3 of a cup of corn syrup, then a 1/4 teaspoon of salt, and then I have 4 teaspoons of baking soda and a 1/4 teaspoon of cream of tartar. Now, cream of tartar, if you're not sure what that is, it almost looks like baking soda, and you'll find it in your spice aisle, and it's a byproduct of winemaking, so it's in there just to kind of help with the make little bubbles in your candy. And I have a sieve because we're going to sieve that into the sugar mixture so we don't have lumps of soda. And make sure you use soda, not baking powder. You want to test to see if your baking soda is active or not. If your baking soda is old and you go to use it for this recipe, your candy won't foam up. So here's a little trick on how to tell if your baking soda is fresh or not. If you want to test your baking soda, just take a little bit into a little container and then add an acid like vinegar or lemon juice. And if it foams up, yikes, I didn't mean to do it that full. But anyway, obviously my baking soda is active, so I'm good to go. If it doesn't foam up, you should get some fresh baking soda and then do your recipe. Also, you can test your cream of tartar. So add a little bit of cream of tartar, a little bit of baking soda, some warm water, and it will fizz up. I have a pastry brush here with some water, and we're going to use that later to brush down the sides of our pot so we don't have sugar crystals forming. And I also have a wooden spoon that I'm going to be using to stir, and a candy thermometer. Now, if you don't have a candy thermometer, that's okay. I'm going to show you how to make this candy without one, but if you do have one, they're handy. So for this candy, we're going to get the sugar mixture up to around 300 degrees Fahrenheit, and that is the hard crack stage. And if you have a candy thermometer, it'll tell you the temperature and what stage you're at. But if you do use one of these, make sure it's correct. I have used mine and it's not correct, and I burnt my candy. So to test to see if it's correct, you get a pot of boiling water and put your candy thermometer in that and let it boil for about 5 minutes. And if your thermometer reads 212 degrees, it's correct, because that's the point at which water boils. Again, it depends on your elevation, but for here, it's 212. Now, this is off by 3 degrees, so I have to adjust it. I have to actually boil my candy to about 297 instead of 300 degrees. Now, another good reason to check it is because I have this one, and I tested this one. This is an older one, it's my mom's, and this is out by 28 degrees. So You definitely want to calibrate your candy thermometers if you're going to use one of these. I also have a 9x13 pan. I've got parchment paper in here that I've buttered. You want to have butter on it so that you can peel it away from your candy when it's done. And excuse the marks on my pan. This is a really old enamelware pan, and I've made so many squares in it, and I just can't get that clean. If anybody knows a tip on how to get these clean, I've even tried oven cleaner. Anyway, then I'm going to dip the pieces in chocolate. So once the candy has set, I will break it into pieces, and then I've got some milk chocolate. I've got shortening. I just add a little bit of shortening to my chocolate when it's melting, and it makes it nice and smooth and shiny. And I also have a double boiler. You can use your microwave though. Also, I'd mentioned I have a bowl of cold water there. Once the candy has been boiling for so many minutes, I'm going to take little bits of it out, drop a little bit into cold water, and I can tell whether it's at the hard crack stage or the soft ball stage. So that's what that's for. First thing we're going to do is add the water to the saucepan, corn syrup, and the sugar. So I'm going to turn the stovetop to about number 3, and I'm just going to gently mix this and get the sugar dissolved. Once it starts to boil, we're not going to stir it, but I can stir it at this point. Once the sugar mixture starts to boil, you don't want to stir it because your sugar could crystallize. It could go back to, once it's down to a liquid form, if you disturb it by stirring, it could go back, it could crystallize and go back to a solid form again. And you don't want that grainy texture in your candy. I'm just going to make sure there's no grains of sugar along the side of my pot, because once the candy boils up, we don't want any stray sugar crystals on the side, because that could also make it crystallize as well. So that's where we keep a wet pastry brush, just to brush down any stray sugar crystals, because these are the things that could cause your candy to fail. I forgot to add the salt in, so we're just going to stir that. So it hasn't boiled yet, so we can stir that right now. I'll just make sure there's no more sugar crystals from my stirring. I'm also going to clip on my candy thermometer. So you want that candy thermometer to be in the sugar solution, but not resting on the bottom of the pot. So this just came up to the boiling point here. It's been on the heat for about 3 minutes, and it just came up to this boiling point. So at this point, we won't stir it, and we will keep the temperature at about number 3 and wait for it to get up to the hard crack stage. So this is up to about 225 degrees, and you can see how big the bubbles are. Once it starts to get close to the hard crack stage, those bubbles will be a lot smaller. So I'll show you that. Also, make sure you do not have any little kids or pets running around under your feet, because this stuff is like molten lava. So you want to have a free workspace and no little ones running around. This recipe that my mom always used to use for every Halloween came from this recipe. It's the Canadian cookbook, and she got that for, I think, a wedding gift or a shower gift. There's so many good recipes in here. The only thing different is she used to use brown sugar. Every time I'd make it with brown sugar, I burn it. So I'm using white sugar. And I burnt some yesterday too. Dang. Damn it, nation. So this has now been boiling for about 6 minutes. According to the cookbook, the whole process of the boiling, bringing it up to 300 degrees, should be about 15 minutes. But stovetop temperatures vary, so you have to just watch the bubbles. You can see they're starting to get a little bit smaller. And this is now up to 240 degrees, which is considered the soft ball stage. So I'm going to show you what that looks like when I put some in a little bowl of water. So the sugar kind of form into, as what the temperature states on the candy thermometer, a soft ball stage. So that's nowhere near being ready. You can see it kind of stretches up and threads, so that's not quite ready. You can see the sugar is starting to almost caramelize, and there's a lot more bubbles. They're smaller. We're at the soft crack stage, so that's about 280 degrees. You can see it's gone beyond the softball stage, and it's starting to thread. It's not quite as brittle as we need it for the hard crack stage, but it's almost there. Okay, this is now at 300 degrees, so we're going to take this off of the heat, and you can see the bubbles, how tiny they are. Now, working quickly, you want to sift this baking soda and cream of tartar into your sugar mixture and stir it around. And it's really going to foam up. You want to get that mixed in there really well. And we're going to quickly pour it into the buttered pan. It's a good idea to have a little cup or a bowl with hot water in it, so you can put your hot candy thermometer into that. This is really puffed up. That's why you want a pan with higher sides. It's going to eventually settle down a little bit, and we're going to need to leave this on the counter for about 2 hours to set up and become hard, where we can crack it into pieces. Once you've poured the candy into the pan, you want to just put your hot pot on a cutting board or something like that, and don't immediately submerge this into water to get it clean. Just leave it, because this is really hot still and you don't want to warp your pan. This will just dissolve. It's just sugar, so that'll just dissolve in water. Okay, I'm just going to melt the chocolate. So I have 1 bag of Chippets Hershey's milk chocolate. I find those ones the best, and it is, what is it, I don't know, it's probably 2 cups. Anyway, I have about a tablespoon of shortening in with the Chippets, and I'm going to melt it on my double boiler. The sponge toffee is cool now, so I'm just going to take it out of the pan and break it into pieces, and I have the chocolate melting here. So we will dip those little pieces in chocolate, and then they will be like homemade crunchy bars. They're really good. So I'm just going to lift it out by the parchment handles, and you can hear it's quite dry. Take the paper off. You can see the holes in it already. And I'm just going to use my meat mallet or something. You can use a rolling pin too, or a spoon. Let's break into pieces, and you can see the inside there. It looks like honeycomb or seafoam. So I have them dipped in chocolate, and they turned out really good. I also have some for my batch yesterday when I made them with brown sugar. You can see that one. That one doesn't have as many bubbles in it. Let's say this one. So this is made with white sugar, and this one is brown sugar. I do like the taste of the one with brown sugar better. Has more of a caramel taste to it, and the white sugar is a little bit lighter, I think, but they're still both really good. Darn it. Now I have to vacuum. You're going to want to store these in an airtight container on the counter. Don't put them in the fridge because they'll kind of go sticky. But if you keep them in an airtight container on the counter, they'll last for a couple of weeks. Actually, as if, let's be real, they're not going to last for a couple of weeks. They'll be eaten. But they'll at least last days. So I hope if you try this recipe, you enjoy it. And thanks a lot for coming along with me. If you liked today's video, please consider subscribing, and I'll see you again next time.